Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to On the Mic with Mike. It is the premier daily enterprise show in the Richmond area. I'm your host, Mike King, and I appreciate you being here with me. This is the place where the game changers come. With me right now, I got the big dog in the house. We got Kym Grinnage, the GM and VP of NBC12, the number one station in the market. Kym, welcome to the program.
Hey, Mike, thanks for having me here.
Okay, so now we got to talk a little bit about what's going on new and exciting over at 12. We're going to talk about the understanding the ins and outs of TV. Give people a little bit about your background first.
Well, the one thing I can say is that I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York.
Of course, you were going to drop that one.
They got to go.
He was going to go with he's from Brooklyn.
Got to go there first. Giants fan, Knicks fan. You know, two losing teams, but
wow, that is tough.
I still try. But yeah, I mean, long time ago, St. John's University, communications graduate. I've been in television broadcasting all my life. Went to NBC12 or NBC in New York. CBS in New York was in affiliate relations. But 30 years ago, actually August 15th makes 30 years. For me and my family being in Richmond, and came here as an account executive. Thought I'd be here 5 years, and
now you've been running the place for how long? You been in the team?
2011.
Okay, so when people always think that news people run TV stations, explain that to folks.
Well, it depends. When you say run, do you mean as a GM of the station or just run stations?
As a GM of the station.
It depends. Your background can come from many different places. I would say that years ago you probably had more general managers who came up through news. Now you probably see more general managers come up through sales, just because of the impact that sales has to have on the business. But I would say that if somebody is coming up through sales on their way up the road, they definitely need to understand the technical aspect and the news aspect of the business.
So over your tenure at 12, you've seen it change through a number of organizations that own the station. Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit about the progression and how it seems and how it feels now with Gray owning the station.
That's a good question. When I got here in 1990, Jefferson Pilot was our owner. We owned radio and TV stations. Then we were bought by Lincoln Financial. Then Raycom Media, a private company, purchased us. And those were good years because when we went to them, it was the first time that we were going to a pure play broadcaster who was of the size of Raycom. And a couple of years ago, Raycom decided that they wanted to buy Gray Television. And then Gray Television turned around, which was a smaller company, and said, you know what, we're a public company. I think we're going to buy you. And that's how in 2019 we became Gray Television. And I will say I've loved all of the TV stations that or TV companies that owned us, but I really love Gray the most.
What makes Gray stand out from the others?
Well, I'll tell you, their approach is they don't really feel the need for having a lot of top line and heavy management on the top of the company. So when I want to get an answer to something, I haven't written a PowerPoint since 2019. I pick up the phone, I call Matt J. Quint, I say, Matt, this is what we're looking for. He may ask for a little bit of data, and I would say that all decisions on big decisions are made within 5 days. That has never happened in all the time that I've been at the station before. And for the first time, I really feel that I truly am running the station and not having to be nitpicked about every decision. I mean, they hire us as CEOs to run the station. And if you're not doing the job, I think that they'll take care of that in the way that we take care of all things when people aren't performing.
Ladies and gentlemen, the voice you're listening to is Kym Grinnage, the VP GM of NBC12, the leader in news in the industry, and right here in Richmond, Virginia, been there for 30 years. Can you give our listeners an idea of how news is generated and delivered to them? So we talk about now that we're in a time of, fake news and those things. What does it take as far from a journalistic standpoint to get that story that's there, making sure it's vetted to get to the viewer?
That's a very good question because a lot of times people will talk about fake news, and I have to always make sure I clarify to people what is exactly fake news.
I question that too. Is that news you don't agree with?
Well, it depends on the person. Fake news to me is news that is not true. I mean, everybody is a journalist now if they have a phone
that is true.
And a microphone, or if they can just get on social media and they produce news. And if you have an opinion, that's an opinion. But if you put something out that is false, and a lot of fake news doesn't even come from the United States, especially on social media, that means it hasn't really been vetted. when we do local news, people have to distinguish between what we do as local news broadcasters versus MSNBC, CNN, and Fox and opinion news stations. People get things confused in terms of reporting news. We're here to report on local news. So to give you an example how that happens, we have a morning meeting every single day. All of the producers, the journalists, the photos, they get together and we review stories we did yesterday. What do we want to cover that day? And the reporters go out with their assignments and they go and vet those stories. If we don't have sourcing from at least 2 or 3 people on a particular story, it's not going to hit the air. And if there's really something that's controversial, that's when Frank Jones, our news director, or J.W. Barnes, our assistant news director, will have a chat about something as to whether or not it should or shouldn't be on. But pretty much independently, they have enough experience to make those decisions. But the real decisions have to be made by those reporters and producers who are in the field, but you have to have standards and protocols so that you don't have to police that every day.
It's 2:41. We're here with Kym Grinnage of NBC12. Can you talk a little bit about the media standing in the community? Now, when the pandemic hit, the major TV stations are all competing against each other. But you guys came together as a collective to talk about you're there to serve the community. Talk a little bit about what a local TV station means to the community when we're looking at, and since this is a business show, to talk about when you make the decision to scrap programming, what that does to advertising for the good of the community.
And that's a very good point, because I know that sometimes we will get calls from viewers who say, why are you taking another news press conference? Why do you have the governor on giving an update on what's going on in the region? Why are you taking the mayor giving another update or the police chief giving another update? Every time we do that, that to me is a community service, and those decisions are made by me and the news director. When that happens, I'm sure my general sales manager says,
it's freaking out.
Kym, we're losing money. And the way I look at it is that our number one thing, and I mean this sincerely, our customer is the viewer. And now it's not just the viewer, but it's also those people who go online. And if we can't give them the information that keeps them informed, and especially in the time of a storm, pending storm or tornado watch, we have to really think about keeping people safe first. If we take care of that, then people will come and view us when it's most important, and that's all of those other times. And we'll handle those phone calls and emails that come in. Any emails that I get, I answer them personally. I tell anybody who, if we get a phone call or email, has to be answered. And we explain to the viewers that even though, let's say during the tornado watch, there's nothing happening on the south side, but there are a lot of people who may live on other parts of Central Virginia that are in immediate harm. And you might know some of those people. But the next time that tornado watch comes, it could be down your street. So you just have to explain the business to them. And most people are reasonable. Those interruptions aren't happening all the time. But you just have to be honest with people. But our number one decision will be about how do we serve the customer, not about the advertising dollar.
Can you talk a little bit about the impact of Call 12 and the seniors and the people who come in and man the phones?
Yeah, that's been one of the things that's been a little bit of a downside, is that I haven't seen my Call 12 volunteers since the beginning of April.
And they're loyal.
And they're loyal. And most of them are 50 years or older. So one, we have strict social distancing in the building. Out of 110 people who normally come into the building, we have no more than 45 that come in at any given time. We did that to make sure that we ran people on shifts. We had the technology to make sure that we could, in 1 week, we went to people working virtually from home, those that could, including some on-air people. We have good separation in the building. You get up from your desk, you got to put a mask on. We practice social distancing. And so all those things have kept people safe, and we'll do that until we feel that it's safe to have more people come back. But with technology, people have been able to do what they could do very well. Gray television has been great. We haven't had a single layoff, not a single furlough, and no one's job is in jeopardy because thankfully, the content has been good from the news department, and the sales department and marketing have made sure that they've done their jobs as well. And obviously, technology department making sure they keep us on the air.
So over the course of time, TV stations have evolved. Now, the OTT is kind of talk a little bit about and let people know what that means to them for getting content.
That's a good question because, you have some people who are cutting the cord. So you have some people who are no longer doing cable, no longer doing satellite. So we obviously have to preserve people doing broadcast. But now people want what you call OTT, over the top. They want to be able to get their news and information through streaming. So our idea is that whatever device that you have in your hand or at home, we want to be able to reach you on that device. And so that means investment in technology and more training. And we just launched our new OTT service. It's been on for a while, but now we have a news service, 12 News Now. And so eventually, 24 hours a day at any time, you'll be able to go on streaming and be able to get the latest update on anything that's going on in the market. But we're really trying to concentrate on what's going on locally. But certainly there's enough going on.
Can you give our listeners an understanding of the difference between broadcast TV, cable, and dish, and those type of the parts that broadcast TV plays?
That's a good question. So if you're receiving our television signal through an antenna, then we're talking about broadcast TV. If you're receiving us through your satellite or cable, then you're receiving it after we send the signal to one of those stations, one of those devices, you're receiving it through one of those companies, whether it's Dish or whether it's Verizon or Fios or Infinity. That's going to be the alternate services. But a lot of people are getting rid of their cable services. A lot is relative, but the number each year goes down, and more people are taking us over the air broadcasting or through streaming. And we just feel that people just have to choose which way they want to receive us. And I think the more ways that people can get us, the more relevant that we'll be. And obviously this is a business, so that gives our advertisers alternate ways in which we can receive people. So whether it's online or on air, on streaming, we reach people in any way that we can.
Every so often you see the notice that there's a conflict between the station and the satellite or dish provider or whatever. Mm-hmm. Explain to people what that means and why you're saying, hey, call them and say, come bring us back again.
Yeah. And a lot of times they say, well, call Kym Grinnage and tell them to bring back my program.
And that's why you're standing there doing the commentary at the end, explaining why their show wasn't on.
Yeah. What it is that there's a business agreement between TV stations and satellite companies. And just like they pay ESPN and other companies, the cable companies pay them for their content. For years, they never paid TV stations for their content. So several years ago, we sat down and we said, look, we provide better than 90% of your total viewing audience. That's a fact, that local free over-the-air broadcast stations are better than 90% of the amount of time people spend on those cable channels and satellite services. So we said we just want to have a fee per household. And so that's negotiated between the two stations. And then each year, or if it's a 2-year agreement, when you get to the end of that agreement, someone says, hey, we need to either be a little bit lower. Cable says, I think we'd like to pay a little bit less. And so sometimes there's a negotiation and we have an interruption, and other times we don't. But I'll tell you, with Gray, we've had less interruptions than with any other company that's owned us. You haven't heard us and you haven't seen me on TV asking people to call their cable company to be fair. So there's always a way to negotiate something because it's good business for both of us.
Can you explain to the listeners about the difference between advertising in broadcast and advertising cable-wise? The model of cable, you're paying for it up front, broadcast TV. Explain to our listeners, because people find that fascinating.
Now, when you say paying up front,
so you're paying to Verizon or Xfinity, you're paying a monthly fee, whereas opposed to broadcast TV, you just turn it on and it's there.
Oh, you mean in terms of what the consumer pays?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't like to speak for the cable companies, but we're free and over the air. So when you're receiving our signal through your cable company, the cable provider is charging you for being the next end of bringing it to you, as well as charging you for all of the other services that they bring you. So that really started years ago for people who could not receive a broadcast signal in a rural area or a place that was hard to receive. And then it really just expanded over the years. But now it's going the other way. People are now discovering that they can get us over the air because equipment and signals are better. And now that people can get us on their laptop or their phone and who knows what other device, you're seeing that people are, as long as we can provide an alternative, that's what they're turning to, because people want to lower their bills.
What's been the biggest, as you come through the industry over these years, what's been the biggest change in the industry?
That's a good
Is it the
question.
speed of getting the information to the end user or the technical side?
I think I think it's been technology, and then at the same time, what is expected from a television station from the viewer. I think that more and more we have to take people behind the scenes and let them know exactly how we put a show together. Distinguishing for people that we are not NBC, the network, so that when the network interrupts or they don't like an interview that Savannah Guthrie does with the President of the United States, that they tell us that they don't want to watch us because they don't understand how we allow that. We're a network affiliate. We're not owned by NBC. So today, I think that people want to see more of a behind-the-scenes view of exactly what goes on at the TV station. And I think the biggest change is we have a bigger responsibility now to be more and more local as people have more access to different forms of entertainment and news.
There was a time, so I'm from Philadelphia, and I left, and CBS was 10, and NBC was 3.
Yep.
I go away, and I come back, and they switched. And it just blew my mind because, like you're saying, you are Savannah Guthrie and Hoda. And you're like, well, that's part of the day. You're also the GM of CW.
Right.
Explain to folks what CW and Bounce are and how you become part of how that enters into the mix as well.
Okay. And answer your first question about what happened in Philadelphia. So you have stations that are wholly owned by a company, not by the networks. And let's just say if NBC and us have a dispute and we decide that we don't want to be an NBC affiliate anymore, and the CBS network says, well, you know what, you're a really good news station and you do good local programming, and your affiliation agreement is over, we're not happy with the station we're with, so we're going to switch affiliations. And so that's what used to happen a lot in the old days. In the probably the last 10 years, you don't see as many affiliation switches. Usually when you see it, it's when someone buys multiple stations in a market and then you have a conflict of ownership. Then sometimes you see a little parlaying where they'll switch.
Is that why you see like people call NBC12 different things, like depending on their age?
Yeah, well, you mean how long they've been in the market?
Yes.
Like people will call us WWBT.
Right.
And NBC12 is how we market ourselves. And some people say, you know, you have to be careful how much you associate yourself with the network, not to become local. But as long as we say anything 12, people know that
Who
it's
you are.
local. And that's where we are. But really, it's all about the philosophy of the stations. Gray has always been the kind of company, and so is Raycom, that we want to be associated with as many networks as possible. So for Bounce, because we want to reach the African American community, you know, we associate ourselves with Bounce. The CW reaching a little younger audience, so we wanted to be an affiliate of the CW. And when we went to digital TV, as you know, Mike, because you're in the business, digital allowed us to have multiple channels. So instead of us just having one or two channels, we were able to have multiple channels, and we'll continue to expand that. We have Me TV, Laugh TV. You know, actually right now we have about 6 networks that are on right now.
And what do people say in the market without satellite or cable? Can you get, what, 17 channels or so?
Let's see, if you add them all up, probably more like 20 some odd channels.
Okay.
And you know, and that's a good thing. You talked in the beginning about how the stations came together during COVID. And in this market, that was probably the first time that all of the GMs in the market collectively said, I think we need to make a statement to the market that, you know, we're going to be here for them, because we knew we were going to have to program differently, do our news a little bit differently, and so we all did a promotional spot.
Those spots were pretty cool.
Thank you. And
Those spots were cool.
We all got together, and even though we can't talk because we can't collude, we're members of the association, the Virginia Association of Broadcasters. So we just decided that we wanted to do something, you know, for the common good, and that was a really big deal. That went national. That people said, "Wow, to see stations cooperate in doing one promotion with all of
The
our
shot when they're
logos.
going across the bridge.
Yeah, that was cool.
That was good. Let people know how if they want internships, how they can make that happen.
That's a good question. If you are rising junior or senior in college, go through the Virginia Association of Broadcasting. You just have to put your application in. This year is going to be a little bit tricky
tough.
because of COVID. I would still tell people to apply. And obviously you're streaming, so if whatever state you're in, you probably have a state association. So you should apply that way. But the other way is, somebody wants to be an intern, they need to be aggressive. Call the news director at the station or call the general manager of the station or look it up online and just send them an email and tell them what you're interested in. Sometimes when we don't have internships, certainly, I always have 15 minutes to explain to somebody what the business is about and give them some shortcuts if they're really interested in how to be successful in this business. So I call it mentoring on the go. I've been doing that all my life because a lot of people mentored for me. That's why I'm in this business.
All righty. We'd like to thank Kym Grinnage. Kym, how can people find you again?
They can email me anytime at kgrinnage@NBC12.com. They can find me on Facebook, and they can also call me directly if they want. They can call 804-230-1212. And just ask for Kym. I'm the only male Kym in the building.
And that's Kym with a Y.
That's Kym with a Y.
Not Kym with an I. Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to thank Kym for coming in. Tune in to NBC12. They are the best in the business. CW and Bounce as well. With that being said, we got to go away, and we'll be back shortly.